Welcome to Mike for Men with your host, Mike Huey. Mike shares real talks for real men who want to make a real impact. Mike recorded today's episode in Washington, D.C. as he shares about the life of a forgotten hero of World War II, Admiral Chester Nimitz. And now, your host, Mike Huey.
Hello everyone, I'm here with another story of a life that made a difference. I bet you nobody that lives here at 2222 Q Street in Washington, D.C. knows of the person that I'm going to share about today. In fact, when I talk with different people in American history, very few people know who we're talking about. And yet, in his time, he was a five-star admiral, made a dramatic difference in global history, and we're going to share the story today of Admiral Nimitz. One of the things that set Admiral Nimitz apart, he was the strategist behind the turning of the tide of World War II at the Battle of Midway, where the Japanese and their Imperial Navy received their first major blow, and it was the turning point. Admiral Nimitz was the one that was responsible for that. He was the five-star admiral, had to do joint work with a five-star general, also in the Pacific, General MacArthur. But a couple life lessons about Nimitz that made it really unique was, number one, he was assigned, he thought it was a sentence, but he was assigned submarine duty back before World War II. Now, he thought that was a sentence, and it was like a death nail to his career. The reason for that is at that time, battleships seemed to be the way to advance one's career the best. And so instead of complaining, he threw himself into studying submarines. And if you even Google today Nimitz and submarine, you'll notice that the entire class of nuclear submarines are named after him. Reason is, he so threw himself into submarines, he learned submarines, he helped with the change from gasoline to diesel fuel, he learned the mechanics, he learned how to use them better than any other admiral in history up to that point. And so he was able to leverage submarines even better than the Germans. Another interesting thing I found out about Admiral Nimitz, I was talking with a friend of mine who I will not release his name, but he was in charge of security for the nuclear submarine bases in Europe, Africa, and part of Asia. And he also obviously studied Nimitz. He told me something very interesting. I remember reading when Nimitz, he would frequently ask his subordinates what they thought they should do for the next course of action. And he'd ask all the different people. And then when they were all done, he'd say, okay, we're going to do this. And it was what he had already predetermined to do. What my friend told me is that another interesting fact about Nimitz was that many of the other admirals of his time would pick the absolute top A players to be on their team. So they would have 3-star, 2-star, 1-star admirals that were better than anyone else. Admiral Nimitz chose to go a different route. He chose to find B players that would work well together, rather than what he was noticing, all the A players, they might be better in their field, but they couldn't work together. And he felt developing a cohesive team that could work together could outperform a bunch of A players, and he was right. Another reason that you probably have never heard of Admiral Nimitz is because, unlike some of his contemporaries, he was really not that concerned about fame. He wasn't concerned about making a lot of money, and he really didn't dwell constantly on what his legacy would be. He was just a boy from the Midwest who chose to go make a difference and to study all he could do and learn. So he was never trying to be the MacArthur with all the media people trying to get around him, although he had plenty of it. And I'll put a couple clips in this video. When he left the office, they had huge parades here in Washington, D.C. in honor of him. The fame came later, but over time, many people have forgotten about this fantastic man who made a difference. So a couple lessons we can learn from Admiral Nimitz here at 2222 Q Street. Number one, when you have a job that you're not necessarily excited about, throw yourself into it, learn everything you can. You don't know, maybe that will be the future, like submarines were for the Navy, and maybe even in the future the whole class was named after him. So number one, throw yourself into your work. Number two, don't worry about fame and fortune. Just go for what you think is best, what your calling is, what your need is. And number three, when you're developing a team, don't just look for the A players. Look for people that can also get along together. And if you're one of those B players and you're trying to look for a place to make a difference, but there's A players ahead of you, don't worry. Really make sure you're working on your people skills and your ability to work together as a team.
Thank you for listening to Mike for Men. If you enjoyed listening to this in a podcast, please subscribe and give us a review. If you are watching this video, please subscribe and click the bell below so you will know when the next episode comes out. If there is a topic you would like Mike or his guests to address, please write them in the comments section below. Again, thank you for listening.